Nice.
Sound synced.
All right, we got it. Now, last episode is probably scrapped because of connectivity problems. But I got a hot story we got to talk about. I just saw on my phone here for today. Ready?
Go for it. Story time.
Border Patrol seizes nearly 800 pounds of bologna from woman crossing into Texas.
We talking like Bar S or Oscar Mayer? What kind of bologna are
Just
we talking?
we're talking cold cuts, baby. Just shrink wrapped cold cuts, 800 pounds.
Where did she have it?
I don't know. That's left up for your imagination, I guess.
I mean, the
Um,
economy's bad. I guess you got to import as best you can.
yeah, bologna was such in demand, high demand bologna, but
Ye-
whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
lots of crazy things going out there in the world. I got another good one too, actual business story that happened to me today.
hmm
Um, I have a deal that is I missed the closing date. There's a lot of things going on. Appraiser, he didn't get us the report, until basically the minute before the closing day. He got sick or something, so kind of random. I did in the past, really crazy story. I was really mad when I used to work for a retail company. We had AMC Appraisal Management Company, so they're the people that hire the appraisers. And I was calling in. I was like, "What is this guy's deal? He's like a week late." Like, well, we'll check in with him again. We just haven't gotten a response yet. Oh, turns out the appraiser passed away.
Ooh.
So that happened. But this guy just got sick. He's fine. But because of it, buyer, seller, everybody's kind of on edge. Seller's agent calls me today and says, and this, I already know the answer, I think, but insurance question. She calls me and says, are your buyers willing to pay for an insurance policy to cover the extra days of closing, which is like 3 days?
So, what do you mean? Like the original closing date was today. They got to push it to Monday. So cover that three
Basically,
day gap.
pretty much,
Uh,
yeah, because their seller didn't want to pay the daily rate for insurance any longer since we missed the closing.
so my advice is always, if you don't own it, don't insure it.
Well, I said, I don't know. I mean, that was my exact first response was how can they insure something they don't own?
Correct.
Can they though? Is there any way? Because she's like, well, we've done it before. It's like,
So it happens, right? If nobody informs us, which 80% of the time people don't inform us that the closing date has changed unless it's moved up. But if it's moved back, we should know. It happens a lot, but typically the seller still has insurance that's going to cover it. So it's almost double covered. Um, but yeah, if they don't own it and they don't have the keys, they shouldn't pay for it because what keeps that seller from going and just lighting the thing on fire?
yeah, we're changing location. I found the issue. It's that stupid internet connection in my office.
Could be. Give us a tour real quick.
This is it. Okay. So you said
But I would
technically
tell that I would
the
tell that seller, his agent, absolutely not.
well, that's what I said. I was like, why? But you said there is a way.
So it happens, right? So like if you're set to close today, let's say like you're set to close Monday.
Wednesday. We were set to close Wednesday. The actual day was two
Okay.
days.
So the time that it does happen, it's usually unintentional, right? If you're set to close Wednesday, new policy takes effect Wednesday, buyer, they move it up to today, right? We would move that date. Obviously, it's got to match the closing date. But if you're set to close next Wednesday and it gets pushed to next Friday, nobody changes the policy on the incumbent buyer policy, then you technically have double coverage, assuming that the seller hasn't canceled until closing. So the
Okay,
buyer
so
could
let's say,
technically cover it, but
yeah,
responsibility still goes on who owns it on paper at that point.
right.
It's a
So
weird legal battle that could ensue if that were the case.
yeah, so let's play it out. So for 2 days, 3 days, whatever. In this case, maybe it's 6 total days, 5 or 6 total days. Let's just say five for the sake of having a number. So 5 extra days. The guy does not want to pay his insurance premium for 5 extra days. So he cancels it. But our effective date on our buyer's insurance was the 25th because this lender that we chose is a very slow lender. They kind of operate like a big bank, but they had a really good rate. So the buyer chose that lender. We kind of warned him, hey, great rate, super terrible process. Over here, maybe just a little bit higher rate, but really great process. You choose whichever one you want. We're good to go. He chooses the bad process, better rate. So because of that, we had to get the clear to close. So technically his effective date was probably around the clear to close date that we have missed. So if that's the case and they kept it to that effective date and didn't change it, and then the seller was to cancel their insurance, could the lender, any kind of issues come to the seller for insurance since he wasn't covered by him, but it was covered by insurance, but by the people who don't own it? Like that's a crazy scenario.
So if it went to, I can only speak a little bit of it because obviously when it gets into legal, I don't really know what happens. But in
I'd
my
love to know.
opinion, in my opinion, if anything were to happen at a house from the 25th to the actual closing date, and the buyer doesn't actually have an insurable interest in the property, they're not held responsible for anything that happens into that time frame. So if anything happens to the house from today until actual closing date, the seller is still responsible for all repairs and financial responsibility of that house. So if it's uninsured, he probably doesn't meet the requirements of his current loan on the house either.
Right.
So he needs to fulfill his responsibilities regardless. And I would
Yeah.
advise buyer never tell the seller, well, we already have a policy in place. Just say, okay, we've updated our documents. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Accordingly.
they don't have an insurable interest. Because if a storm hits this weekend, the seller is saying, hey, you pay the deductible and everything.
I think
They
it's
don't own the house.
yet again another example of someone doing a job that they're not licensed for, that is not their job. People trying to do too much to try to make somebody happy to make a check.
Yeah. So I'll give you a perfect example on how it works on our end. So we had a client whose mother was the spokesperson for their daughter's policy. Wanted us to reshop and requote the daughter's property, everything like that. She wasn't happy. We weren't really excited to keep her as a client, so we were just willing to let it go. It's too much hassle. She calls us and says, hey, you never canceled that policy. My reply was, you never asked us to. And she said, well, we need to get that canceled. My reply was, well, you're not on the policy. Your daughter owns the property. She needs to request it. So they requested it and they said, you need to backdate this. And said, okay, well, we need proof that you have coverage to the date that you needed us to cancel it. Because the insurance company is going to assume responsibility up until the day we cancel it. And if they don't need to do that, you need to show proof that there was not a gap in coverage so they can relinquish all responsibility of that property. So if they needed it canceled 30 days ago, a tornado ripped it up 10 days ago, technically her insurance that hasn't been canceled yet is responsible for it. And now you've got two policies and they're going to go into this fight and we would be liable for that on E&O because we didn't cancel it, but she never requested it. So people need to inform everybody involved in the deal when it comes to a transaction, even after the fact, when you already own the property and let's say you're just switching carriers.
Well, that's a good advisor doesn't stop just because you closed and got paid once, right? I mean, keep
They
going.
shouldn't.
There's stuff going on. But yeah, it's that was a crazy situation. And then I brought it, I pushed back because my job, right, fiduciary duty, ethical duty is to my client to try to get them the best deal possible. And these guys just wanted to be tough and the seller wanted to feel like they got a win because we missed the closing date, so they wanted something for it. And now both sides were at fault because seller chose title company. They didn't get the survey into us until 5:01 the day before closing, where you have an underwriter and a closing department that takes like 48 hours turnaround time to look at anything. And so it's like, well, it's tough luck. At the same time, though, on our side, we had some fault too. I'm happy to admit when things don't always go perfect in our world. A lot of times in sales, I'm happy we're talking about a negative situation today because it's not a negative. We're going to get it done. Everyone will be happy. Our client's
Mhm.
actually happy that it got pushed because they get to skip an extra mortgage payment
Right.
instead of paying them. We're going to push it to the first instead of the late of the month. They get another 30 days of not having a payment. It helps them move in. They got one more month of rent. So it's a really good situation for them anyway. So like, okay, we missed it. Darn, let's push it.
Well,
Um,
even if the seller, let's say he's got to cover an additional 5 days of coverage, he's got to pay for it. Let's say his policy is $3,000 a year. You
yes,
divide
this is
that by
exactly
365. He's got to pay $8 a day.
this is exactly
He's
what I did.
he's willing to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars to cover $8 a day.
I even told her, I'm gonna round up to 10. This guy's he wants him to have an insurance policy on something that they don't own so that he can save $50 so that he can have a win. Can you
Yeah.
talk to your client?
At that point, yeah, that's
It was
ridiculous.
a, it was a very interesting ask, and I immediately pushed back on it. I was like, whatever. So yeah, good scenario there. But canceling insurance is a good thing to talk about, especially at times of renewal. Everyone's wanting to refi right now. Everybody's looking for money right now. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the renewal process today, and let's make this a big insurance episode. Because one thing from
Yeah.
the mortgage standpoint is if you screw up, and like in this case, you're double covered. Okay, cool. You got to fight to figure it out. Maybe you'll get a refund check later. But what happens if you totally flub? And like I had a situation on my second house I ever bought. The title company and the insurance company somehow never talked and they never dispersed the check, and I didn't have insurance. And then my lender was doing their backdating quality control stuff, and they did force place insurance, which was expensive. And they're like, "Hey, like
Yeah.
you for 1 week you didn't have coverage." I was like, huh? And so, yeah, I mean, that came back to me, and then I learned a lot about the process at that time through a personal experience instead of work. But tell us about renewals, what's going on.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know about your situation because I was actually the agent that wrote that policy for you. The title company is supposed to disperse that check. So that's where me and you were both confused as to what happened.
It was
It
messy. I was like,
happened.
"Hey, you guys got like I don't know, 3,500 bucks sitting around?"
It's
I
it's it happens sometimes, rarely. It's kind of
would say it's more than rarely. Like these companies, everything, as much as AI and everything is being involved now, a lot of real estate is still a little bit antiquated. Like the sales part of it, the front end sales can be, automated and everything, but the back end sales is not. It's still very much humans and old Windows 98 style quality control
yeah.
systems. And like it's people that make mistakes. And so yeah, it might be rare, but it's not that it doesn't happen with
No,
title companies.
it happens more than you would think. And we try to, as agents, we try to control it as much as possible. So like in that scenario, if you close on a home, the check actually is supposed to get sent to us directly. So then we relay it to the insurance company. These insurance companies give you 30, sometimes 90 days of leeway on a new closing to receive payment because they know there's a lot of hands that are involved and the check will touch a lot of hands. So we try to take control over that as soon as possible. So we know, hey, we sent this check in, we can track it, we know when they received it versus the title company sending it directly to the carrier. We don't know. We have no clue. And some carriers will send out their own invoices versus ours. So there's two invoices coming in, and a lot of title companies will send it directly to the carrier, which by all means, if it works, it's fine. But then we have no way of tracking or understanding when it was paid. But to get to renewals, it's actually really simple if you stay with your broker. So the one thing that is my biggest pet peeve is I'm a broker. I have access to pretty much 90% of the market here in Texas, with the exception of some of these bigger companies that have commercials, right? If we cancel something and put a new policy in place, it is on us. We have all the documents, we can backdate it. If you need it canceled on the 30th, we put a new policy in place on the 30th, but that cancellation doesn't go through until like the 10th. We have documents to show that coverage to get it backdated to the date that we need so you can get that refund. Where it gets tricky is you switch carriers and or brokers altogether. You get a new agent. Now nobody has the documents. Like policy I wrote, the agent, even in my own agency, doesn't have that document. I have it. So if you switch brokers, you run that risk of a break in the line of communication. So it's important to stick with somebody you trust, not only just a company that will do you right, but an agent that will do you right. And if you stick with the same person, like you said, you're willing to admit fault. I'm willing to admit fault when things go badly too. Hey, I missed this. Hey, we didn't process it. Hey, I didn't send it to my service team. We're going to get it fixed, but we have everything on the back end to get it right, to get all the dates lined up to where you're not paying an extra 30 days for insurance for a mistake we made. So
Yeah. The human
that's kind
element
of
is
how it
real.
works.
The human element is real. The best people in the market still overlook things. Sometimes they overlook a lot of things because they're so big and so many things going on. But
Right.
like even people with a perfect setup, a perfect amount of volume, they're still going to miss one or two things here and there. But you catch it, you've got a process in place to catch it, and then boom, corrected and move on. Whereas like this lender that he chose because they did have a better rate. I mean, we're saving the guy money, so what are you going to do? But sometimes as a broker, we are in a situation where we don't want to work with a certain carrier in your case or a wholesaler in our case, but darn it, their deal is really good. And their process just stinks. So we've got to do everything and work double time to try to make up for it so that everyone knows what's going on. So over communicate, try to check things, put our process in and highlight some things that we know are going to get missed by them or whatever. I mean, the amount of middle managers at these places is unbelievable. Like you got a guy that's literally just checking emails, reading them, and then saying, "Okay, underwriter, it's okay for you to read these emails." It's like, oh my goodness. But
Yeah.
that is the retail world. So as a broker, we have options to do that stuff, and then we've got our people that move lightning fast and give a better deal anyway. Um, and it just so happened this is a veterans deal, so with the VA, not everyone has great VA rates. Some lenders don't even take VA in
Right.
FHA, right? They only do conventional or whatever. I've been at places where like we don't do FHA. Like, okay, whatever. And so yeah, crazy. But this slow process, I kept kind of reminding a realtor of mine that's on the deal. It's like, hey, this is why our other wholesalers are so good. And like what you can see now, like us versus retail, but like in the sense of um, just who we broker to matters. Right? Everyone likes to say who you work with matters, but who we broker to can matter as well. And if you gotta set those expectations, and we set them, but we didn't harp on it enough, probably in this case, it's like, and we probably should have told the sellers too, like, hey, this could get slow.
Right. I've seen it on social media. It's usually around contracting, but it applies to everything, right? You can have three things. You can have it quick, you can have it fast, or you can have it done well. You can pick two. You can have it
Mm-hmm.
fast and done well, or you can have it fast and done cheap, or you can have it done well and done cheap. It's going to be slow. Like you can pick two. Rarely are you able to get three. You may feel at the end of the day you got all three, but it wasn't by design. It
Yep.
was,
Perfect example.
yeah. I mean, we deal with it a lot on our end. People want to make changes. They want to do this. They want to do that. More so on the commercial side. I just dealt with one recently with an investor who does flips. He needed me to update dates on closing. And so I'm updating them. They're changing every 24 hours. He's telling me to update the dates, update the dates. Well, the carrier that we're using requires us to cancel the existing policy, fully release it because nothing's been paid, and rewrite a new one. Well, their invoicing takes 24 hours for us to generate an invoice. So if you email me the night before closing that you need it changed to and say, hey, we need a new policy, we need to change this date, I'm not going to be able to give you an invoice by 9 a.m. the next day. I'm going to have to wait 24 hours. And it turns
And
out that
that's
he didn't actually need to change the dates. The bank was like, we don't care what the date says as long as it's on or before the closing date.
Yep. And that happens with these certain lenders as well, right? Like, okay, we're in underwriting, great, everything's looking awesome. We got your rate locked, we're exactly where we need to be. And then the one of these slower lenders, again, good deals, right? But you're trading things because you usually pay for what you get, right? So
Yeah.
cheap, you might not get what you like. But they're like, awesome, we're like 3 to 4 days turn time. We're like, huh?
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
used to
We
getting it the same day.
we deal with it a lot in our industry. We have I'm not going to say the carrier name, but we do have a carrier that's available in Texas that for a while was significantly cheaper, even with the rate increases. You quote something with them, you're like, oh my God, I haven't seen anything with a one in front of it in years. But we also have clients who have dealt with that company, like the deal's too good, we can't pass it up. They go to file a claim, it's like one lady in a home office that answers and deals with the whole company. She never answers the phone. They don't return phone calls. They don't answer emails. You need to get a new roof on your house. It's 6 weeks before they even return your call. And then it's another 6 weeks before they send an adjuster out. And it's like, this is why cheaper isn't always better. Because when you need it, right? Everybody says, well, why do I need insurance? I'm not going to file a claim. But then when you do, you're upset that it's not moving as fast as you wanted it to. And it's, there's a reason that this policy was $2,000 cheaper than everyone else. Because when you need them, they're going to disappear.
Yeah, 2 out of 3. I like that. All right. Any last comments on renewals or anything that you want to throw in here?
I actually just happened to read an article today about, the big heads of some of these big agencies and brokerages, more so on the commercial side, but they speak to all property and casualty insurance. The insurance market is moving at two paces. They're moving, they're still hardening, which means prices are going up, eligibility is becoming tighter, and then they're also softening up. So competition is re-entering the market, but at a much slower pace than competition is exiting the market. So we're still hopeful that 2025 is going to be better. A lot of these increases everybody's seen over the last year and a half, 2 years, is in preparation for the upcoming years. You have to refill that pool, right? You're not going to jump into a pool that has no water in it. It's got to be full. Right now, the pool's been empty for 2 years. So everybody's trying to refill it to give you some relief on the back end. So even if it does empty a little bit, you're still working with 4 feet of water. You're not going to hit the ground. So that's the best way I can put it. It's not getting great, but it's getting better.
Nice. Okay. Well, also not great is Rangers officially eliminated.
I wore my short shirt today. I think
Yeah.
tomorrow's their last game, or today.
Got my spring training ball here as a reminder that it could be okay in spring.
Hey, we've got a moment in history that the Rangers will have forever. We were the last
Yeah, they lose.
loss in the
Yeah.
Oakland Coliseum.
I mean, I heard that some guy was running around planting a flag. I was like, man, we could have stolen that moment from them, and that would have felt really nice for us.
The last out in Oakland Coliseum history was Jankowski.
Yep, 6-4 or 6-3.
I mean, sign that bag and take it home with you.
Yeah. All right. Well, a big insurance show.
Yeah, for once, something to say. There's not much on our end that people want to hear, but
People need to hear it though. You don't always get what you want, right? Get what you need.
yeah, exactly. We should have this one up for next Friday. That's the plan. We're gonna try to get these up every week.
Every Friday, record and post. So
Gotcha.
delay of 1 week for whatever current event we speak of. Last
Got it.
week, what we missed with the bad reception was big Fed talk, but basically the 10-second summary on that is Fed cut the rates. The market had already priced it in. Rates pretty much stayed the same. Mortgage rates actually got maybe a little bit worse, like a tiny bit worse, but mostly unchanged.
So one thing I want to ask you is, since I am a client of yours, you did my mortgage. Eventually, let's break down some real rudimentary numbers on whether or not it's a good idea for us to refi now or keep
Yeah,
holding out. Just to share that information and how you kind of evaluate that. I think people would like to hear that.
we can talk
If you're
refis. We can
if you're
talk
willing to
refis.
do it.
Yeah, I saw somebody online today breaking down a again, I don't think we'll ever do an episode, at least for the foreseeable future, without talking about bait and switch marketing.
Mhm.
I saw somebody online you probably saw it too, follow the same account, I believe you told me about it. So breaking down like, hey, this was a loan estimate. Somehow they got a loan estimate for like a quote. I don't even think they applied. They just sent a loan estimate, which that
Right.
part little interested about. But they broke down how it works with fees and refis and rates and what to expect and everything. A decent video. But yeah, careful about refinancing information being sent to you in the mail, just like you said last time with insurance papers that you're getting. Like just because it says array doesn't mean anything. You look at that loan estimate, you're like, whoa, $12,000 in fees.
We did see the
Yeah,
same video.
baby. Yeah, baby.
Yeah, we're gonna save you 6 grand over this year, but you're gonna have to pay 12 grand to save that six.
Yeah, nice little 25-year break even.
Yeah, so it would be interesting, and plus, I am interested to see when the right time to pull the trigger, or when it makes sense for us to even seriously consider refinancing. So might as well use
Yeah.
it for content if we can.
So my tease for that next thing that we talk about then would be, as a consumer, just make sure it's the right time for you and look at your entire situation. But yet then as a salesperson, we're pushing volume. We need loans, we need closings, we need checks for our own income, right? But there's got to be a balance, because we can't just put someone into a refi just so I can make a check. And I
Right.
think there's 90+% of the market out there right now is putting people into a refi for themselves, not for the actual person refinancing.
Yeah.
That's my
So yeah,
tease.
it's always a little bit of bait and switch. Um,
Yeah.
sometimes
So we
it's
got
sometimes it's ethical, sometimes it's not.
one. The bait and switch might be, hey, I'm an advisor, but really they're just a used car salesman. Get off my lot with that car and leave the cash.
Exactly. Well, a good chat today. We'll try to keep these short.
This was, yeah, not short, but we're doing good. All right.
Yeah. Anyway, probably Shaw's in 2 hours.
I'm in.
All right.
Solo today.
See you
Bye.
guys. See you guys later.
I'll tell you.